Gibraltar, to anyone who's come across him, is the backbone to any well-constructed team. He can turn the chaos of a gunfight into a moment of team clarity and pretty much negates most scenarios where you could be team wiped from range. Let's take a look. Passively, Gibraltar pulls out a 50 HP shield when aiming down sights, blue if it's you or an ally, and red if it's an enemy, blocking incoming damage to the upper half of his body. Once broken, it regenerates after a 9-second window. His most notable ability is his tactical, often referred to as bubble, allowing him to throw out a disc that projects a dome around it for 12 seconds. The dome will allow any player to walk in and out, but will stop projectiles from entering or exiting, making you completely safe from gunfire or nades if you're inside. He also revives allies 33% faster while inside the dome, and the dome itself is on a 30-second cooldown. And finally, his ultimate allows him to throw a smoke grenade, calling down a concentrated mortar strike on a marked position for 6 seconds, damaging and shocking all enemy players that are hit for 40 HP. These red indicators will telegraph the locations of incoming mortar rounds as far as a 24-meter radius around where the ult was thrown. This ultimate has a pretty long cooldown of 4.5 minutes. In addition to his base abilities, Gibraltar is also part of the new support group of legends, whose unique benefit is opening blue support bins for extra survival items. These show up on the map and the interface, which will help as a reliable source for meds. They'll also be able to craft dead ally banners for 30 crafting materials at a crafting station even after the banners have expired. And also, as Gibby has one of the larger hitboxes in the game, he therefore gains the Fortified perk, which reduces all incoming damage to him by 15% except for headshots, and he can't be slowed by bullets. I just wanted to note that his running animation makes his movement feel sluggish for some, as his strides are longer and slower. However, all legends have the same base movement speed, and therefore is just an issue of perception. So that's the overview, but now we get into the useful details about his kit, how best to use Gibraltar, and then how to play against him. Your passive shield, in addition to your Fortified perk, gives you a huge advantage in a one-on-one exchange with other legends. This means you should be holding down your ADS more frequently as a way to cover yourself from gunfire. To negate the drawback of reduced mobility while firing, you can utilize sliding to maintain speed, as well as being selective with weapons that have minimal impact on strafing, such as pistols, SMGs, and shotguns. The shield itself covers the top half of the body, leaving the bottom half exposed. This can be countered by crouching or sliding, making it cover most of his hitbox. The status of your shield can be seen on either side of your weapon while ADSing, displaying your current shield levels and counting down the 9 seconds before regenerating. The shield also grants a few ways to avoid damage, as it deflects arc stars and can block the effects of explosives in range just by crouching and aiming the shield right at them. You're given the option to turn off the shield using the secondary tactical button. However, in almost all aspects of play, there's no advantage to doing so. That is, except if you're the last player on the team and planning to rat the rest of the game. The shield itself won't do you any favors when you're going for the more stealthy approach, so there's an argument to be had that turning it off is valuable when you don't want to be seen. Placing his dome tactical can benefit you in a wide range of environments, covering your squad from a long-range engage, pushing enemy teams safely from a mid-range position, or even right up close and personal. The tactical naturally trades well with the likes of an enemy bang or Gibby ult that would otherwise catch any teams out in the open, just to give you the breathing room you need to make the next move and potentially encourage other teams to engage on each other over you. The dome can be used to protect doors from being broken when placing it so the edge just covers the front of the door itself. This way it's protected from melee and you can block people just walking in from the other side. And from the other perspective, you can isolate the door inside your dome in order to break it so that enemy players would have to reposition and come into your dome in order to stop your engage. The bubble itself can also block out the likes of caustic gas, as long as the source, the canister that caustic throws, or is tactical, are outside of the bubble itself. And it will also completely cut off Watson fences as long as either end of it are on different sides of the dome. Unless you're really holding off a few teams and have indicated you want to save the tactical for a particular counterplay, you can afford to use it quite sparingly at times, making it useful to loot boxes that are in contested positions, secure a beacon, go for an early res or early kill. The options he has to isolate a situation into this tiny space, blocking out the rest of the world unless they run right next to him, is one of the most powerful tools of any legend in the game when used to really push advantages like these. The electric line from the disc to the top of the bubble start flickering when there's a 5-second duration left, so you can get yourself ready to start firing or rotating. Note that the bubble isn't a perfect sphere, but just the top half, so when on hills or small platforms at height, it may not be as useful depending on where the enemy is. As far as the ultimate goes, it also has a versatile range of uses, being able to cut off areas defensively, like throwing it between teams, or pairing it with a dome to negate a push, or offensively at enemies behind cover to engage safely and pull them out. Consider saving your ult until the last circle if it's close, so you can guarantee using it to cover the remainder of the map. But bear in mind that you can get caught in your own ult, with both damage and the shell shock effect, so watch those telegraphs once you've thrown it down. So now you have a rundown of his abilities. Let's talk about how we use all of his kit together. The issue with new players in Gibraltar is his kit seems so simple at first, so it's incredibly easy to use him sub-optimally and therefore write him off fairly quickly. But you should know this isn't the case. He's always been amongst the top tier of legends for both pro and ranked play, so it's best to take the time to understand the scenarios that he can capitalize on so effectively. In general, the peak shot style of gunplay works great with Gibraltar, as he can stay in a gunfight with his passive shield out and a high damage short range weapon. Consider, however, that the size of his hitbox means that his playstyle doesn't work so well around smaller areas of cover, where he can't take advantage so well of moving in and out from behind it. There's a real skill to learning to work around Gibby's bubble, particularly when it comes to fighting amongst it. Playing the bubble requires a flow of movement that, when executed correctly, always feels like a satisfying outplay, and requires fundamentals in the game that all players should be comfortable with as or against enemy Gibraltars. The basic breakdown is to use the fact that you can see through the dome to do peek shots on enemies before pulling back into the safety of the dome. This works heavily in your favour when shooting people at range, but will require a bit more strategy for close range fights. A good general tip is to use the existing terrain to isolate small areas during the fight, so that you can utilise peeking from your current position against the enemy in their current position. Doing this is preferable over what a newer player might do, which is throw the bubble out in the open in order to have a nice open space that you can work with. Consider that this also creates a space that the enemy can work with too. However, of course, this at times could be the right move. Some advice on effective bubble play is being patient and peeking as a response to the enemy peek. Getting a feel for the timing will allow you to get shots off on an exposed enemy more times than not. When engaging teams in rooms or corridors, you can place your dome so it covers your entry, as well as provide good positioning and angles within the room without any risk of being shot at. As he res his teammates faster in his bubble and in an incredibly reliable spot, it makes sense to pass the gold knockdown to him to take advantage of the improved res. And finally, watch for the guard shield cooldown to replenish your shield after exchanges, so that you can re-engage fights with a continued advantage. There are a number of interesting things to consider when going against the Gibraltar to try and counter the advantages he brings to his squad. Firstly, consider that other than when and where it's placed, the tactical itself doesn't provide any inherent advantages to his team during a gunfight, so in some scenarios you can just as easily use his dome to your advantage. Using nades into the dome is great to pull them out of position, particularly with thermites that hog the ground for a considerable amount of time. And from outside, you can arc star or caustic ult the top of the bubble near the end of the bubble's duration, so that it impacts them at the right moment using the visual 5-second timer that I mentioned earlier. Mad Maggie's ult and Crypto's ult will destroy the bubble instantly, and even Maggie's tactical can damage people inside when fired onto the outside of it. Additionally, Watson's ult will block any mortar shells in range, so it's useful to have that in mind as a response to an enemy Gibraltar ult when you hear it coming. Although he's a bit of a bruiser, his hitbox, in my opinion, locks him out of some of the more standard gameplay mechanics like hiding effectively behind ally shields, loot boxes, and other similar small areas of cover, meaning they can often get caught in bad positions. If you're a Gibby yourself playing against an enemy one, then consider trying to get your bubble down after they've put theirs down, which will hopefully allow you to conclude the fight on your terms. For legend viability, I feel like Gibraltar is the one legend who will pair effectively in any composition. Not due to any huge synergies, but because he has a lot of strengths that just fit Apex gameplay in general very well. Long range, high damage poke as well as a shotgun could be seen as an ideal combo if you're playing around his kit, due to his outstanding trading potential with his passive and being fortified, as well as being able to peek with bubble. Once you've got used to all the core strengths of Gibraltar and can play him comfortably in ranked, I suggest you look at some of the highest level players who use him often. The most notable one for me has been Chet Ubetcha, who's the #1 Gibraltar and has a number of videos that show off high level Gibraltar mechanics that are far beyond the scope of this video, which is more to get you completely clued up on Gibraltar from scratch, so check him out below if you wish. But before you head over there, if you like this video and want to see more in the future, hit subscribe so you can catch me on the next one. Gibraltar's arguably one of the most valuable picks for any organised team and even pub lobbies. He brings so much to the fight but needs to be played strategically to make the most of his kit and due to his limited mobility. But remember, we play for fun, so if it stresses you too much, cool off, touch grass, and when you play to win.